Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. A huge hello and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where we provide world-class education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here with you today for another exciting episode with the Resume Whisperer and Corporate Culturalist. Our topic today is dealing with trick questions. Have you ever been in an interview and you were nervous and you were excited and you just were, give me the questions, I've got the answers. And it was a trick question. And the rest of the time you were sitting there thinking, I wonder if that was a trick question. Well, guess what? We have the expert with us today, the star of our show, joining us from Canada. It's Josef Stetter. Let's welcome him to the program. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. I apologize for the technical difficulties, and the delay in the show, but the show must go on.
That's right. And it's really about the content anyway. So this is an exciting topic because I think all of us have walked down that path of falling into the trick questions. But before we get into that, for people who are just joining us, a huge hello to people on Instagram. This is our first day streaming there. So we really would like to hear from you if you have any questions or comments, and of course, to everyone else. So Joseph, for people who are not familiar with Resume Whisperer or Corporate Culturalist, what is that? What do you do?
So I wear two hats. On the corporate side, as a corporate culturist, I help companies understand their people, hire the right people, engage them, and keep them. As a resume whisperer, I help individuals land their dream job in as little as 2 days. And I've had the honor and the pleasure of helping over 11,000 people.
That is a huge number, 11,000 plus. I mean, it's amazing. So to me, when I hear that number, I immediately say, this is the man. This is the go-to. This is the person who can provide value. Can you share with us a little bit about your own personal journey? I mean, have you been doing the same thing for most of your life? Have you been, I know you have a lot of different hats that you've worn in the past. Tell us about that.
So I've switched careers 9 times because I didn't know what I want to do when I grew up. And in the process, I've switched jobs over 18 times. And as part of switching, I had to get recertified, retrained, prove that I had the transferable skills. And along the way, I kind of realized, hey, wait a minute. No one's teaching you this. This is why so many people are frustrated and spending 6 months to a year looking for a job, eventually just accepting any job because they're desperate. I've been able to help clients land their dream job in as little as 2 days. And so it's about reprogramming what you think you know and doing it correctly so that you get noticed and you get hired faster and sooner.
Joseph, how important is it to know something about the person who's going to interview you? I mean, do you have to do a lot of research? If I was going to be meeting with you, you're interviewing me, do I have to know about all the things that you've done in the past, your favorite football team, if you even like football? What do I need to know before I even meet with you?
Well, again, a basic understanding of the company first. And at the bare minimum, go on LinkedIn, do a little bit of what's on the profile. So if nothing else, you have a great starting point for the interview and the conversation as a way of building into rapport. Like, oh, I see that you went to this college or university. I know quite a few people that went there, or I went there myself. What was your experience like? And it starts the interview with a nice kind of warm environment and allows for things to go from there.
I think
But you don't need to do like a ton of research. It's just more of having a sense of background. Sometimes companies won't tell you who's interviewing them or you. So just as long as you know a little bit about the company as a background introduction. And if you don't know anything about the person, especially if it's a face-to-face interview, look around the office, see if there's a picture of a family, see if there's anything on the wall that you can comment on, anything around that you can, oh, okay, very colorful office, very modern, very, I love the furniture, whatever it is, that it's just a quick transition to build rapport.
Yeah, it's kind of almost expected, isn't it? As opposed to being just very stoic and okay, give me the questions, let's go for it.
Again, generally speaking, interviews start with what I consider to be a trick question, which is the tell me about yourself, right? Most people don't understand that this question is a foundation of the entire interview. And so people start rambling about the fact that they love to read or they love to travel or they have beautiful kids. And look, I have two beautiful kids, but if I'm being interviewed for a job, my kids are not what's going to get me hired. So if you're asked that question, look them in the eyes. And again, if it's against your culture or you're a little bit shyer, look right above the eyebrows. It gives a person the respect that they deserve. Doesn't go against your beliefs, but it looks like you're looking into the eyes. And ask the interviewer, if they ask you, tell me about yourself, where would you like me to begin? Whatever they tell you to begin, they've just hinted to you, this is important, and this is probably what you're going to be doing on the job. So pay attention to those cues because that will give you insights as to what's next and how the interview will go.
Excellent. Thank you. Joseph, something that's coming up for me, I'm someone who likes to share and, I'm just put myself out there, but sometimes that can be a big mistake because if we start giving a lot of information about ourselves, like for example, I might say to you, well, I love to work out. I spend 3 hours a day working out. And you might think, oh, how much work is she going to get done if she's working out all that time? Like we might say things that then the interviewer is thinking, well, this is probably not going to be a good fit. Does that happen?
It does. And so here's where this is a very important transition. And this is part of like wowing the interview in terms of the 7 rules that I've created. One of the rules is make the questions about them, not about you. So even if you share, Dr. Jacalyn, that you work out for 3 days, you just preempt it by saying, you know what, my commitment to my health, where I work out 3 hours a day, is not even close to the commitment I'll give my work and the dedication I'll have to make sure that I always surpass expectation. So the moment that you make that transition statement, you're not really getting into that category of, you're talking about stuff that's irrelevant, because now you're talking about your commitment to work, your dedication to work, the fact that you bring that energy of working out to your job, or that working out will energize you more to do your job. At which point, that's what companies want to hear. They want to know that you will make an effort to be productive there.
Excellent. So we've talked about that first trap, that pitfall. Tell me about yourself. And you go back to your childhood, you go back, who knows, you start rambling on. And by the way, I want to remind people the interview's for a certain amount of time, right? It's not like you're going to have 3 hours. If the interview is a 30-minute interview, you've got to get the relevant information out there quickly, don't you?
Yes and no. So here's the thing. If you're giving the right information that's impressing them, even if they've budgeted a half-hour interview, but you end up having a 2.5-hour interview, you're the candidate they're hiring, or you're the candidate they're most impressed with. Because if you weren't impressing them, they'd cut you off after a half hour. Very few professions are extremely strict. Sometimes government work is very strict on the timing interview, so you have to learn to speak very fast, or condense to kind of one, maybe two examples, but move through information quickly. In a corporate or private interview, there is variety. They schedule it because typically most people, when they answer interview questions, kind of go into autoresponder. So people might ask you, well, tell me about this job. And people automatically start kind of spewing, well, I did this and I did this and I'm a good team player and I'm hardworking. That's not the answers that companies want to hear. That's going to shoot you in the foot before you even start. What companies want to hear is your ability to make the money, save the money, or increase efficiency. So address a problem that you dealt with. What was your approach to dealing with it? And what were the results that you produced? Nobody cares that you know how to do something. I've never met an accountant that doesn't know how to do financial statements, ever. I've never met, an engineer that has not studied physics or thermodynamics, for example. It's kind of a given. So it's redundant to repeat what's obvious about the job description as an answer. And most people not only do that in the interview, but they also do that in their resume, which is why for many people it takes them 6 months to a year to find a job.
Thank you, Joseph. On some other episodes, we've talked about how to position yourself, how to frame yourself and your work so that you stand out. What about bringing some visuals when someone says, tell me about yourself? And you've got sort of like your little brag book. Oh, here are the awards that I won. I went to the President's Club trip. I look at this ring that I got as a result of. What about something like that?
Again, those are great, but if that becomes the focus of the interview as opposed to you sharing your story, that's taking away because you're kind of going, look at this rather than let me tell you. Right. So the visuals are good or as a reference point, but at the end of the day, you have to understand the company's interviewing you to do specific tasks. So when they ask you a question and you give an example and they go, ooh, can you give us more details about that example? Or can you give us a similar second example? They've just given you a huge hint. Ding, 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 ding. This is what you're going to be doing on the job. This is what we care about. So there's a matter of gauging the questions because, again, going back to what I said earlier, most interviewers will start an interview with something like, tell me about your last job, or tell me about your work experience, or, variations of those questions. And most people just kind of, again, autoresponder. I know how to do this. I know how to do this. I have experience with this. And then generic, fluffy, I'm hardworking, dedicated team player information. If you focus on results, people listen to you different. So I can spew I've said in previous, but I'll repeat here, like because I've switched careers so many times, I've had various sales experiences in terms of retail, door to door, car sales, private education, recruitment sales. So just because I can spew off sales words and say where I've worked in sales doesn't mean I know how to sell. But if I actually give you actual results, so I was asked to build a call center that's outbound that was expected to generate $300,000 for the year under the expectation that my team would convert at 1% roughly and call leads that are more than 4 months old. I put together a team that in less than 6 months did $2.25 million. So when I say I generated $2.25 million in less than 6 months on an expectation of 300,000, I'm getting the company's attention right away. Now, a good interview will go, how did you do that? Or what did you do to become so successful and to get your staff to buy in to what was being done? And again, that's where the corporate culturist comes in, where it's respecting your employees, treating them well, giving them incentives that are intrinsic to them as well as extrinsic in terms of like, we did a team required to do this, but the top producer got a prize. And so there's a level of the team helps each other out, but there's a desire to win that prize, for example, and I made the prizes worthwhile for them. So me going, I know how to do B2B and B2C and account management and relationship building and lead generation is important, but it doesn't tell an accurate story of the results that I produce. And this is one of the things that most people, even in trick questions, get trapped in, because they kind of try to respond just for the sake of responding without understanding what's actually being asked here. The reality is that every question is asking you, can you make me money? Can you save me money? Or can you increase my efficiency? And if the answer is yes, prove it. Okay, so this world of trick questions, or questions that are designed to catch you off guard. Now, there are questions that, for example, I will ask, which are more, I want to know your personality. And sometimes it's not even what you say, it's your physiology and your body language that will tell me more than the actual answer. But the reality is that, again, the every question is designed to go, we need you to kind of fill a pain point for us. And as long as you can prove that you know what you're doing and how to do it, we're interested in speaking to you. We're interested in hiring you, whatever version of that you want to call it.
Excellent. Thank you. Joseph, what about when you, as the applicant, have certain information as a storyteller that you want to make sure that the interviewer knows, but they don't actually ask you anything where you can share that information? Is that something that is relevant? So, for example, it could be that you really want the interviewer to know about some community work that you do because you like to volunteer, or you want them to know about your education, or you want them to know that you use the products that they manufacture, but they don't ask anything that you actually can bring that information in. Is that acceptable to at some point just say, "Hey, I want
Again,
to." Oh,
as I said earlier, it's relating it to them. So if you're doing community work, the emphasis is that you can wear something from the company to give the company credit for participating in the community and giving back. So that creates PR for them, that creates goodwill for them, that creates free um, SEO and free kind of marketing for them, because they can record your participation in whatever community event. They can leverage that as, we care. We care about the people in our community. We care about not just the big charities that we serve, but other things as well. If you just talk about, I do this, again, if you volunteer somewhere and you're sitting on a board and you have results that you've produced, those results matter. Results are results. It doesn't really matter where you got them. So whether you did direct, like I'm going to use sales because we both have that background, whether you did direct sales, whether B2B, B2C, B2G, and other forms of it, or you did fundraising for charity, there's still a form of sale. There's still a way of tracking the results that you can produce. So when I worked in investments and I was early on in my career, I was asked to spearhead the United Way Committee. And when 9/11 happened, even when there was 1,500 people that were being cut from the workforce, we still managed to raise $400,000 in charitable donations, right? So it just goes to show that it's all about wording to make that connection that it's of value or interest to the company. And keep in mind that no matter what the question is, you choose the answers that you give, you choose the examples that you give. So you can always give one direct work example and then tie it in to whatever you do outside of work that might be relevant to it.
excellent. That makes a lot of sense. Now, would you say that this is a trick question, or is this just to be expected? Joseph, why should we hire you for this position?
Yeah, in part, it's a trick question if you, again, try to do autoresponder. But the reality is they want to know that you have confidence that you're going to produce results. I think I've made this analogy before, and I love making this analogy. Uh, Dr. Jacalyn, if a single individual came up to you and was like, hi, I'm hi, I'm hi, Hi, can I get your number? What are his chances, or her chances, or their
Zero.
chances? Zero.
Zero.
Now, it might be slim because you might be physically attracted to them, right? And so I say slim to none because there's always that small chance. Understand that most studies on women that I've read say that the two things that women look for in a guy are confidence and sense of humor. Confidence relates to your work too. So when they say, why should we hire you? They want to hear that you have the confidence to say, I will produce better results than you expect. I will produce double the results that you expect. I will do this, and here's why, because I've done this, this, and this in my career, and I'm confident that if you gave me a shot, I will do it even better for you, right? And it's going back to them. So it is a model where it's kind of, okay, you've given us, we'll call it facts. There's an adage that says, facts tells, stories sell. So if you're in, again, engineers, for example, very smart, not always known for their bubbly personality. So if an engineer can speak engineering and talk about, serial and parallel circuits and breakers and things like that, they're giving all the correct jargon for the job. But just giving me the jargon doesn't convince me that you're the best one, that you're going to fit into this organizational culture. And so this is where that question can lead to reinforce it. Give me the wow factor. Give me the excitement. Give me the, you went on a date and you have butterflies kind of level of energy that more is going to happen. So it's a trick question if you tend to kind of answer with, here's the cookie cutter answer that everybody that's been to a careers course, everybody that's been to an unemployment center or a welcoming center if you're a new immigrant, or any government agency has been given, recycled material that has been around for 40, 50 years, that 50 years ago when we were still in the Industrial Revolution, saying that you're hardworking was important and relevant. Today, it's subjective. And so in 20 years of recruiting, I've never really cared if somebody's hardworking, dedicated, or committed, or a team player. And I've never looked for it on a resume, and I don't ask any questions to that degree in my interviews. I'll ask about personality, but in different ways where people are more honest with me, right? Because if I ask somebody, what are your three strengths? By default, I'm hardworking, dedicated, committed team player. So I'll switch the question around, say, if I were to ask one of your closest friends to describe you in 3 or 4 words as if they're setting you up on a date. And then I shut up. Now, what's interesting about that question is that I'll have people go, well, Sarah thinks I'm crazy. So not Sarah, but Jenny would say blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, duly noted. Some people think you're crazy. Right now, in the question itself, I'm also looking at your body language, your physiology. So if you're like, well, they probably say I'm energetic and I'm outgoing and I'm bubbly, and that's how you're speaking to me, I'm sorry, no. Right? Because if your friends would say, oh, I'm energetic, I'm outgoing, I'm bubbly, there's a different energy in the answer. But instead of me saying, what are your three strengths? Because it's redundant to me that everybody says that, I ask how your friends would describe you for a date. If your friends would describe you for a date as hardworking, dedicated, committed, and a team player, it is the worst date ever.
I love that example. Thank you. And by the way, for people joining our program for the first time, none of this is scripted. Joseph has no idea what I'm going to ask. I don't know what he's going to answer. So I just wanted to let people know that it's all real. So a question that I have is, I look at a resume and I notice there's a large block of time where the person doesn't have anything on their resume. So I say, Joseph, I'm looking at your resume. I'm looking at your LinkedIn. I noticed for 3 years, there's nothing there. What were you doing? Is that a trick question?
No, because as long as you own what you've done, like, you know what, I decided to travel a little bit. I had a relative that was ill, and I decided to take care of them. So I know that you were taking care of your mom, Dr. Jacalyn. So there's nothing wrong with owning your heart, your commitment to learning, your commitment to discovering, you're taking training to better yourself. Because not every training is university and college where you get a piece of paper from it. Sometimes you're going to, you know, events, and you're sitting there like, a Grand Cardone where you're doing the 10X event, and it's hype and it's energy and but it's trying to implement that and learning how to implement that, even if you're trying to do it on your own, for the sake of being better and offering more. So there's nothing wrong with saying, I took some time off, or I did some work that was more, you know, intrinsic to me in terms of like I volunteered for this charity, but the work itself wasn't relative or similar to what I have done in my career. So I chose not to put it in. And then you can say what the work was and why you chose to do it. And now you're ready to come back to your career, kind of thing. As long as, again, you're connecting it back to the company and how that will allow you to produce even better and be better. So there's nothing wrong with gaps, and especially with, still technically being in that world of pandemic where a lot of people were downsized because everything was shut down. It made it a little bit harder to find work. It made it a little bit different. We're also very much in now kind of a gig economy where people are working as a contractor for 3 months and then traveling for a month or two and then working for 3 months. So there's a lot of ways to approach gaps in your career. That's not necessarily a trick question. Trick questions would be things along the lines of, tell me about a boss or a coworker that you really hated, for example, right? This is a trap because if you start ranting about how awful the company is or how awful the person is, uh, no company wants to hire that. Nobody wants that as their there. So there's a level of understanding that in that type of question, the default, we'll call it personality assessment, that most people know is the Merrill Reed, which is the driver, expressive, amiable, analytical personality types. And so it's fine to acknowledge, look, I'm a very analytical person. So when I'm dealing with somebody who's expressive that loves to tell me stories, I've learned to listen to the stories and take out the data that I need in order to do my job. So it's not an issue of having, let's say, a bad boss or a bad company. It's about being adaptable and changing my communication style to make sure that I'm performing at the highest level and I'm getting along with all the stakeholders that I need to interact with. And so that's very, very important. There's a multitude of personality assessments. There's the DESA, there's the DISC, there's the Myers-Briggs, there's Colby. Um, uh, there is Profile XT, which was bought out. There's a long list of them. At the end of the day, it's an awareness that
We can't hear you for some reason at the moment. So while you're looking at that, for anyone just joining us, we are talking today about dealing with trick questions in the interview process. And we've got our expert here, Josef Stetter. He's the resume whisperer and the corporate culturalist. If you have a question that you're wondering if it's a trick question or something that you'd like to ask him, please do put it into the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And we do have this show. Typically, it's every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So Josef has helped over 11,000 people find employment. And I personally know of someone who Josef helped. I referred this person, and I really didn't know Josef that well at the time. It was before he had a show here, and this person raved about him and said what a fabulous experience it was. So I would love to have you reach out to him as well. We're going to take a quick break right now, and then we'll be back in just a moment with some more trick questions to help you in your interview process. So please do stay with us. We're going to first hear from one of our team members has a new book that's out. We're going to take a look at her book trailer, and then we'll take a look at one of mine. Here we go.
Hello everyone, I'm Simon MacDonald. I live in the West Highlands of Scotland, a very beautiful part of the world. Seems a long way from the USA Global TV station. But remember, USA Global TV is worldwide. It's a fantastic platform. And every Wednesday, I come along here as part of the show of the United Kingdom News and Culture. And it's just like a family reunion each time. It's one of these amazing stations that has such a beautiful, friendly, and intelligent atmosphere as well. And we reach out to an audience in the most unimaginable places. And I came here, I don't know, must be over a year ago now. I was introduced by Dr. Philip Chan, and I met Ian Plum-Turner and Helen Achard, who are co-presenters on the show. And then Diane Floyd-Bem came along as well. And I mean, the five of us, Dr. Jacalyn, of course, who is our host and our mentor, has just made this show work so well. Tremendous people, lovely time we have, and we impart a lot of information, a lot of knowledge. Nothing's rehearsed. It's all done off the cuff, and it all just gels. And we get great feedback from people coming back and saying how they're enjoying the show. It's lovely to hear, and it's lovely to get that interaction from outside as well. And we're all listeners, and some of us are elevated listeners as well. So we enjoy every second of it, and we hope you do too.
I just can't take it anymore. I am so tired. I am so frustrated and burnt out. Why won't anyone listen to what I have to say? Yet I look on social media and everybody's smiling and having a great time. Meanwhile, I feel totally alone with my world rushing by. Guess what? Great news. You have a choice. You can change the dynamic by learning how to listen at an elevated level yourself through the power of listening educational courses. Can you imagine from where you are today to having a life overflowing with abundance? It's possible. Learn how to listen at an elevated level. You'll have deeper connections, better relationships, and more authentic conversations. Start today. Go to usaglobaltv.com, education, and learn how to listen. We have courses and children's books. Let's work together to learn how to listen. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to USA Global TV and Radio. Our show today is the Resume Whisperer with Resume Whisperer and corporate culturalist Josef Stetter. Joseph has helped over 11,000 people find employment. Can you imagine? That's such a huge number. And he also helps on both sides. He helps with the individual, and then he also helps with the organizations so that they can embody what it takes to have a community and a culture where people feel appreciated. So we'd love to hear from you. If you have any stories that you'd like to share about your experiences in the workplace, that would be fabulous. We're going to be bringing Joseph back on right now, and we're going to continue the show. Welcome back, Joseph. Hello.
Hello. I think
Hi,
StreamYard is playing tricks on us with this Instagram and kind of everything's connected or not, but all is good.
Okay, perfect. Well, we're glad that you're back. So we've been going through some questions that are considered trick questions, and then also some questions that are probably pretty basic that you'll find. So what I'd like to have you share with our audience is many times, at least in my experience, and I haven't gone for an interview in corporate in a very long time, but many times there are numerous steps in the interview process, and any one of them can exclude you. So if you don't have the right answers, if you don't come across in the right way, you might not make it to the second step or the third step. I know from when I was in corporate, we had, I want to say 8 different steps. So I think I told you we had tests, plus you had the breakfast, lunch, and dinner with different executives to see how you would respond, because we did a lot of entertaining. But is there a typical number of steps for different jobs? So depending on what industry, maybe it's one and done. Maybe it's, they want you to go out in the field for a week with their people. What is your experience?
So I don't think there's a standard, because every company in every industry have their own process. I know that companies like Microsoft have been known to have as many as 9 interviews. I know that in some of the global clients that I've recruited for throughout the years, they might do 3 interviews, sometimes 4, depending on the seniority. Obviously, for positions like engineering, there is, or software development, there is a test in terms of technical aptitude to make sure that you have the background needed to do that. But at the end of the day, like, the interview is broken down to, a few minutes of rapport, and then the foundation questions, which is kind of the discovery of what you've done and who you are, followed by, wrap up of, do you have anything to add and anything to ask us? And this is a big mistake that a lot of times people are like, oh no, I have no questions. By default, you should be asking 3 to 10 questions at the end of an interview, unless it's kind of a phone interview that's a 15-minute interview. But 3 to 10 questions, 2 to 3 about the company itself or the role as a whole, and then 3 questions of kind of gauging how well they liked you. So 3 of my favorite questions for that are, if I were hired tomorrow, what is the first thing I can do to make an immediate impact? And so that gives you a hint as to what their biggest problem is. And whatever the company says to you, reiterate that you've got experience in this, give them your examples that you gave them before, even if you've already told them that, just to reiterate that. Another great question is, what would you say is the biggest obstacle for success in this position? And again, whatever the obstacle is, show them that you can overcome it and you've produced results in that. And the final question that I'll have to ask, which we'll call it a two-parter. The first is, of other people that currently hold this position or have held this position, what are some of the characteristics that you would like to see repeated? And then if you want to know if you're on track to get hired, add, and how do you see me fitting in? If there's a hesitation or it takes some time to formulate the answer, you're not getting the job. If they're answering you kind of immediately with enthusiasm, you're definitely in the top running for the candidacy. But again, and then there is a salary negotiation where, again, in itself, the salary question is a trick question, because if you give you a figure that's way too high, you can shoot yourself in the foot and dismiss yourself. And if you give a figure that's too low, you're shooting yourself in the foot because you're undervaluing what you're worth, and therefore might be paid less than what the company was thinking of paying or ready to pay. But again, we've spent a couple episodes talking about salary negotiations and different ways to approach that with confidence and with emphasis on the results that you shared in the interview, so that the salary becomes a mute point in the conversation.
Thank you, Joseph. What about the point in the interview where the interviewer says, well, what questions do you have for me? Is this an opportunity to really try and wow the person with something about their company? Oh, I'm a stockholder and I've been following the progress of the stock and I just wondered in your blah, 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 whatever. Or something to the effect of, I was wondering who I'm competing against and how you see me versus them. No.
Well, that's a fair question. And again, it's important to, like I said earlier, it's just, ask 2 to 3 questions about the company or the position. So, I read that you guys just launched this product or service. How is that launch going? What's the impact of that launch? How does that launch relate to the role that I'm going to have, or what will my contributions be to that? So being informed is definitely a way to impress. And again, the 3 questions I just mentioned, what is the biggest obstacle for success in this position? What is something I can do to make an immediate impact? Those are kind of the reinforcers of, I can produce results, I have confidence, and I know what I'm doing. And that's why you need to hire me, kind of thing.
Thank you, Joseph. So just one more question that I have for today, which is, let's say you work at an organization and you're let go and you get asked by this new potential employer, what happened at your last job? Why aren't you there anymore? Now, you can spin it. You can tell the story in a way that you're not lying and it's maybe not a negative, but at the same time, you work with a bunch of people who know exactly why you're not there. So how do you answer that type of question?
So I think there's a few, this is kind of a few layered question, because if it's a company restructuring or downsize where there was a bunch of people that unfortunately were restructured, you're in the clear, and you can kind of say, unfortunately, let's say pandemic, companies are still dealing with the aftermath of that. A third of the workforce or quarter of the workforce was restructured, and unfortunately, I was part of that. And that's okay, and that happens in every organization. At the end of the day, even if you had a very toxic work environment and culture, you don't want to get into the negative. You just kind of say that, what, I came to the realization that uh, my genius or the solutions that I kind of proposed were not being received. And I decided it was, a good time for a change. Obviously, if you did something where it's a sexual harassment, you stole from the company, and you were fired, you want to try and give a positive light, but keep in mind that it's a small world after all, and people know people. People are friends with people or colleagues with people, especially in the same industry. And you can burn your bridges very fast. I mean, I think I've shared in previous episodes, I had a candidate that one of my top accounting firms desperately needed an accountant that speaks Korean. I found somebody who was making $65,000 a year, was working for a big five firm, did not want to leave to go to a smaller firm. I had 20 partners break every rule in the company to basically offer him a $20,000 raise, a $5,000 signing bonus, parking pass, gym membership, profit sharing, and bonuses, which was only offered to managers just because this individual spoke Korean. This individual came to the interview with such an inflated ego that he walked in and said, well, even though they made the offer to him in writing before he even had his first interview, just because of the language skills, when he came to the interview with the partners, he was like, well, since you're so desperate for me, I want a $30,000 raise. And the partners got so angry that, and I'm talking, this took me 3 months to negotiate and have an offer letter to the candidate before he even went to the interview. And so they were so angry with his arrogance and kind of you owe me attitude that not only did they not hire him, but then they each kind of went back to their office, and we're talking about 20 partners, and called their entire Rolodex, each partner's Rolodex, to all of their friends, all of the partners, of what this person did. And he was pretty much blacklisted from every accounting firm in Toronto, and his employer found out, kept him, but did not promote him for 10 years. So he kind of shot himself in the foot. So there's a level where always put a positive spin as much as possible. But sometimes having integrity and saying what, unfortunately, the work environment we talked about, it was causing me health issues, and I made the decision the job, so I decided to, and you need to give a lot of specifics. You can say, there was, for example, a lot of micromanagement. There wasn't any recognition of work. There was an expectation that no matter what was being done was not enough. And, I recognize that I'm ready and willing to work, but not at the cost of, staying in the office 16 hours a day, for example. And so as long as you're not kind of, well, this person was the complete douche and it was like this, and your energy is negative, yes, there's ways of addressing that.
We lost Joseph there for a moment. My apologies. Well, that was a great discussion. A question that I wanted to ask him about, and we'll table it for next episode, was when the interviewer would say, and I've known a number of recruiters and they shared with me that this is a question that definitely comes up. The interviewer will say, if I were to call your last employer, I know some people over at this company where you used to work, what would they say about you? And Joseph's back. I think this is kind of a trick question. And the reason I think it is because I don't know how much a previous employer is allowed to say about you. But by asking that question, you could be walking right into a trap. Joseph, what are your thoughts about this?
Okay, so there are restrictions on how much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Dr. Jeff? Okay,
Yes.
so there are restrictions on how much information. Keep in mind that especially in North America, we are in an environment more competition rather than collaboration. So companies don't want to give their juice and they'll just simply say, not a good fit or we had an issue. Now, again, if it's something more severe, like drinking on the job or anything like that, they might say that because there's potential liability issues. But generally speaking, again, you want to kind of say, here's kind of what they'll say to the work ethic, the results that you produced, your ability to get along with coworkers. Those are things that you're allowed to ask in a reference check. You know, using labels like, was this person an a-hole? Was this person this? Not so much. And again, we're in an environment where um, you know, this is where culture also plays into effect because, you know, for example, Middle Eastern culture tends to talk very loudly. Just because we talk very loudly doesn't mean you're in trouble. It's just a communication style. So part of understanding cultural differences might or might not impact the overall experience of the job.
Excellent. Thank you for that answer. So, as we're about to wrap up for this particular episode, I would love to just spotlight you again. Who is your ideal client and what is the value that you can bring to them?
So I've predominantly worked with white collar professionals. You know, these are your engineers, your accountants, your finance people, your banking people, your IT people. And I'm working with people that feel like they're undervalued and underappreciated or, you know, haven't gotten a raise in a few years or got, you know, the typical 1 to 2% raise and feel that they deserve so much more because they're producing results. I'm working with people that need a change of scenery. I work with people there. And again, my mindset is this: if you're not getting hired in 3 months in your industry, something is missing or something is off. And that's where I can come in and help, you know, highlight the right things to get you there faster.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for all the wisdom that you shared. I really enjoy this show because I'm always learning something new. So, to our people who have been watching all the episodes, thank you so much for your loyalty. And to all of the new followers that we have, we really do appreciate you. Joseph's contact information is there in the show notes. So, you can just go ahead and take a look. And he's also on LinkedIn. Please go and connect with him there. And Joseph, any idea what we'll be speaking about next week? We probably continue this conversation really because there's still more.
We can continue the trick conversation because I think we there's more layers of the onions in terms of the personality types, in terms of, you know, watch out for this because this word or this phrase can really hurt you in an interview.
Absolutely. Well, you have a beautiful rest of your evening there, and I'm sure you and I will be in touch very soon.
Have a great evening.
Joseph.
Thank you again. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. And thank you to everybody out there who's watching us on the live or the replay. We really do appreciate you. All of our shows are organized in playlists. Obviously, we stream to many destinations, but we'd like to encourage you to go over to our YouTube channel, which is USA Global TV and Radio. And you can go to book your session if you'd like to be a guest. You can also go to subscribe and just look for the playlist that you're interested in. And you can just tap that bell and then you'll be made aware of any of the shows that we have that you're interested in. We are also interested in what you're interested in hearing more about. So we do provide world-class education here. I watch all the shows, and I'm just truly amazed at how much I've learned in the last less than 2 years that we've been doing this here at USA Global TV and Radio. So I know that our team is working so hard to bring you all types of content. So if there's something that we're not bringing to you that you'd like to have us discuss or show that you're interested in, please do reach out to me or anyone on my team. You can contact us via the information there in the show notes. So that's all for us today here at USA Global TV and Radio. We will be back streaming again live on Monday. So please do join us for that. And we'd also like to thank all of you for getting us to over 1 million views on our one YouTube channel for this year. So that being said, I'm going to close out with a little sponsorship that is for the Lady Ella books that I've written with some of our team members, and some I've done myself, but it's a great idea for the holidays. If you're looking for an activity book for children, please go ahead and contact us for that as well. So thanks again for being here, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.
USA Global TV and Radio, in partnership with Dr. Jacalyn LLC, present Amazon #1 best-selling author, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck is a certified life, career, and executive coach who teaches people how to listen at an elevated level through her courses and her books. Dr. Kerbeck teaches her clients how to open their hearts and express themselves through their creative genius. In her children's book series, The Amazing Adventures of Lady Ella, the listening mentor, Dr. Kerbeck teaches children and their families how to listen at an elevated level. Dr. Kerbeck has worked with clients across the world to guide them in how to express themselves and communicate at a highly effective level. Join our team of elevated listeners so you can listen without judgment, without providing a solution, without interruption, and without stealing the stage. To order your books today, go to drjacalyn.com or Amazon.